Before Europe rose with steel and gunpowder, before cathedrals kissed the sky and Rome called itself eternal, there were men cloaked in black silk, draped in gold, riding stallions across sand and stone. They came with books and blades, with Korans in one hand and architectural scrolls in the other. They bathed while Europe stank. They read while Europe burned. They healed while Europe bled. You called them Moors, but you never truly knew them. You painted them pale in textbooks, gave them Arabic names and stripped them of their mother tongue. You erased their skin black as the Nubian night and replaced it with myth. But now, the veil is lifting. The masks are crumbling. The empire you forgot is waking up. This is the true story of the Moors, Africa's lost sons who lit the world while the West slept. The term Moor comes from the Latin word Morus, originally used to describe the Berber people of Mauritania, an ancient kingdom in North Africa, located in what is now modern-day Morocco and Algeria. But as centuries passed, Moor became a catch-all term in Europe used to describe black Muslims, Berbers, and sub-Saharan Africans who were part of the Islamic expansion into Europe. By the time the Moors entered Spain in 711 AD, the name no longer referred to a single ethnic group, but to a powerful civilization of African and Arab descent, united by Islam, knowledge, and empire. They were scholars and architects, astronomers and engineers, warriors and poets. They were the vanguard of Africa's intellectual invasion into medieval Europe, but who they were truly has been deliberately blurred. In the year 711, a general named Tariq ibn Ziyad led a coalition army of Berbers and Africans across the Strait of Gibraltar, landing on the southern tip of Europe. It was the dawn of a new age. The Visigothic kingdom of Spain collapsed swiftly. In just a few years, the Moors controlled most of the Iberian Peninsula, calling it Al-Andalus. What followed was not just military conquest, but a civilizational upgrade. Cities like Cordoba, Granada, and Seville flourished under Moorish rule. The streets were lit at night. Libraries overflowed with manuscripts. And philosophers debated Aristotle centuries before the European Enlightenment. Europe would later call it a dark age, but under the Moors, it was a time of light. The Moors didn't just conquer, they cultivated. In Cordoba, there were over 70 public libraries, hospitals, universities, and over 300 public baths, at a time when Paris was still a swamp. They introduced Europe to algebra, advanced astronomy, herbal medicine, surgical techniques, irrigation, and even citrus fruits. They built palaces like the Alhambra, whose intricate geometry and waterworks would influence architecture for centuries. From carpets to chess, from Arabic numerals to Greek texts, the Moors were the bridge between the ancient world and the modern age. But who were these torchbearers? Their art reveals Africoid features. Their generals came from the Senegalese plains, from Ghanaian bloodlines, from Fulani and Tuareg stock. The deeper we dig, the darker their skin becomes. European chroniclers used terms like black as pitch, burnt-faced, and woolly-haired to describe the Moors. Arab historians describe their brothers in arms as Sudanic, meaning from Black Africa. The famed philosopher Ibn Khaldun wrote about the Moors of Mali and Ghana as black Africans of noble blood who ruled the north. Statues, paintings, coins, and tapestries from the Middle Ages often depict dark-skinned rulers wearing crowns, armor, and turbans. The story of the Black Madonna, worshipped in dozens of European cathedrals, is a lingering relic of Moorish spirituality and aesthetics. Even Shakespeare in the 1600s calls Othello the Moor, a black general in Venice. So why do modern textbooks depict the Moors as Arabs with light skin? Because colonialism needed to sever Africa from its golden past. As the centuries progressed, black African dynasties began to dominate Moorish leadership in Iberia. Among them were the powerful Almoravids and Almohads. The Almoravids were Muslim Berbers from the Senegal River region, whose leaders, like Yusuf ibn Tashfin, were described by Arab sources as dark-skinned and wool-haired. They reinvigorated the Islamic Empire in Spain in the 11th century, reinforcing religious discipline, military strength, and West African cultural influence. Then came the Almohads, also rooted in North and West Africa, who ruled from Morocco to southern Spain. Under their reign, philosophy, poetry, and science reached new heights. They were not guests in Spain. They were builders of Europe's future, and they ruled, not by permission but by conquest, right, and divine mandate. But no empire lasts forever. By the 13th century, the Christian kingdoms of the north, Castile, Aragon, Leon began pushing south in what became known as the reconquista, the reconquest of Spain. It wasn't just a military campaign. It was a racial and religious cleansing. Moorish cities fell one by one. Libraries were burned. Mosques converted into cathedrals. Moorish children were baptized under force. In 1492, the same year Columbus sailed to the Americas, the last Moorish stronghold, Granada, surrendered. That same year, the infamous Alhambra decree expelled all Jews from Spain. Muslims were next. Those who stayed were tortured or forcibly converted under the Spanish Inquisition. The Moors, once the light of Europe, were now hunted like shadows. As the Moors vanished, their contributions remained hidden, rebranded, or stolen. The European Renaissance didn't begin in Italy. It began in Toledo, Granada, and Cordoba, where European scholars translated Moorish texts into Latin. Many of the works of Greek philosophers previously lost to Europe were reintroduced through Moorish libraries. The foundations of modern medicine, astronomy, mathematics, even the concept of a university were passed from black and Berber minds into the hands of the West. But the hands changed the names. Ibn Sina became Avicenna. Ibn Rushd became Averroes. And the Moors, they became footnotes. History was rewritten by the victors, and the Moors were erased from their own chapters. When Spain expelled the Moors, they didn't disappear. They dispersed. Some returned to North Africa, to Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. Others fled to West Africa, bringing with them Andalusian art, poetry, architecture, and advanced knowledge systems. It is no coincidence that the Songhai Empire and cities like Timbuktu rose shortly after centers of learning, astronomy, and Islamic scholarship. In a way, Africa welcomed her sons home, and they continued to build, teach, and inspire. But many were captured by slavers, confused for ordinary Africans, and sold across oceans. Their nobility forgotten, their turbans replaced by chains. The Moors did not vanish. They were folded into the African diaspora in Brazil, the Caribbean, and the Americas. They became Negroes in the slave records, but they had once worn crowns. The true legacy of the Moors is not just in stone palaces or algebra equations. It is in the bridges they built between worlds. They proved that black people, yes, black people could rule empires, master science, preserve ancient knowledge, and spark enlightenment. They showed that Africa was not merely enslaved. Africa was once the teacher of the world. Their legacy challenges the false dichotomy of savage Africa and civilized Europe. It reminds us that history is not linear. It is cyclical, fragile, and often rewritten. To know the Moors is to reclaim the pride of a continent, and to remember them is to resurrect truth. They called them Moors, but they were sons of Mali, daughters of Ghana, warriors of Niger, prophets of Kush. They came with stars in their eyes and sand between their toes. They were black, proud, brilliant, carrying scrolls instead of swords, until swords became necessary. They built aqueducts while Europe drank mud. They built cities while castles rotted. They whispered secrets to the skies and named the stars. But history betrayed them, painted over their faces, buried their bones under marble plaques and Latin words. Yet still their shadows move, in arches, in poems, in the silence between forgotten names. They are the Moors, and they are not gone. They ride still across memory, across blood, across the burning edge of truth.